Hi guys, welcome back to another video. If you don't know me, I'm Helen from Crafty So and So, and on this channel I like to make all sorts of beginner tips, sewing tips and sewing tutorials, and even some sew-alongs, so you can find the best deals, the best things that you need to know, and also little tips and tricks to make your sewing hobby and life easier. Before we get started, I'd love for you to like this video. It really helps my videos and my channel be pushed out to more people like you who like sewing, and it just helps me do better in the YouTube algorithm. So today we are going to be making a really easy DIY craft, and this is a craft that I personally love. It's something you can use that you've got at home. And if you, like me, like collecting enamel pins, whether they are Disney or not, this is perfect for how to display them. So without further ado, let's get started. So before we get started, I want to run through some of the things you're going to need for this project. The first is your fabric. I'm using this unwashed, undyed, unbleached calico just because I really want a nice plain background, and I think this will look lovely. I've got my medium to heavy weight interfacing. This will help give the fabric structure, so when you've got the pins and the weight in the embroidery hoop, this will really help give it some more stability and kind of stop it from sagging. Of course, my embroidery hoop, you can use any size that you like. This is just the one that I have, so this is the one I'm going with. My fabric scissors, some embroidery thread just to have a little bit of a decorative side and a little bit of a decorative trim to the embroidery hoop. Of course, my sewing needles, so then when I come to do the embroidery, I've got my needles ready, and some ribbon. So I'm just using this really thin white ribbon, but you can use whatever you've got or whatever you want to use, and that's just what I chose. And of course my pins ready to display. So first things first, you want to make sure that your fabric is ironed and washed, and I'm just going to really quickly cut a rough square around this piece so then I don't have the full thing in my way. So I'm going to give that a quick iron, so there's no more lines and creases in it, and they're all gone. So if you need to, make sure you use some steam just to get that really, those lines really out of there, just so you've not got any of this to deal with when you are trying to display your pins and you've got a big line running through your fabric. There we go, I'm pretty pleased with that. Turn that off, and then you've got your fabric. So I am going to start by putting the fabric in the middle and using the hoop as a diagram. Because you want your fabric to just be a little bit over, we're going to draw a circle around the hoop, and then we're going to measure 1 inch extra around. So I'm just going to use my chalk pen. I would use that's the back. So make sure that you're using your fabric marking tool on the wrong side of your fabric, just because then any marks that might not come out, like this one's blue against cream, might be a bit strong. At least then it's on the wrong side of the fabric and it doesn't have any impact, a visual impact on the front. So hold it in place and just do a rough marking around the fabric, around the hoop, like so. Don't worry about the notch at the top, because you know where the basic line is. And once you move that away, you'll be left with a circle. So once you've got your circle, you want to be using your tape measure then to mark 1 inch around the edge, just so that you've got a nice extra edging overlap, because when you put the fabric in, you want the fabric to overlap so it can come to the back like so. So if you do an extra inch around, then that's plenty to pull back. So I'm just going to mark on roughly using the inch marker from my tape measure. You can use a ruler if you've got that to hand instead. This is just what I'm using because I've got it here. So once you've done that, it should look something like this. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see that, but I've got my solid line and then my dotted line on the outside. And from there, we're just going to simply cut the dotted line. Doesn't have to be ultra accurate because this is going to be neatened up on the back anyway. So just keep going around. Like so. There we go. So there we have our circle. So once we've got this cut out into our main fabric, we want to cut the same size and same circle into our interfacing. So what I'll do is use this as the template on the interfacing and cut that out. So simply lay that on. Interfacing I always try to use as little as possible because it can be quite expensive to buy. So I always try to, even like this scrap piece I'll have here, I'll keep that and use it for smaller projects like a plique. So lay that on. You don't need to pin it in place because you'll just be quick to, it doesn't have to be really accurate, just as long as it's the same size. Just simply cut around your shape. So there we go, you've got the main fabric and your interfacing layer. So now you want to iron these together, but make sure that the shiny side of your interfacing, which is for me this side, this has got the glue on it, wants to go to the wrong side where you've already drawn your circle onto the wrong side of your fabric. So then this is the shiny side down to the wrong side of your fabric. Make sure that you're really firm when you're ironing this together, just because you really want it to stick together, really bond and make the main fabric really strong. So I like to use quite a lot of pressure just to make sure they really bond together, really strong. Also helps get rid of any like creases that you might have caused in both layers. So once you've got that together, it should feel kind of like paper and quite nice and thick and rigid. And I'm just going to trim round the edges just a little, just to get rid of any remaining bits of the interfacing. So that can all go in the bin. So there you go, you've got your circle ready to put into your, so there you go, you've got your circle ready to put into your embroidery hoop, which we're going to do now. So start by loosening your hoop just a little, just until you can get that one out. So you want to put the inner hoop to the back, and the one that's got like the notches at the top here wants to go to the front. Try and line up, so I can see the line, the blue line through here, so I'm using that as a guide just to help me kind of line it up so I've got a nice even amount of fabric around excess around the hoop. So I'm happy with that. So I'm going to start pushing that into place. So place your hoop on top and push down. It might feel a little rigid and hard to do, but you might need to loosen your hoop just slightly, a bit more, just to get it into place. But you should be able to do it. There we go. So there's my hoop. Obviously I've got a little bit more excess fabric over here, but I'll trim that down once we get into it. Before you tighten this part of your hoop, you want to pull out to make it nice and tight. Almost like it's going to be a tambourine. Mine's still a bit baggy, so I'm going to give it a pull and make sure it's nice and tight. So I'm going to simply hold onto the frame and just pull the fabric so it's a little bit tighter. Make sure you don't pop the frame off, because you'll have to start again. And then once you feel like you've got it tight enough and you can't pull it anymore, start tightening up the top here. So now I've got mine nice and tight, I'm going to start looking at the back. So now using my embroidery thread, which I've already got prepared, I'm going to do like a little decorative slip stitch, straight stitch around the edge just to make it look a little bit more decorative. So I'll do that now. So as you can see, I've gone around the full perimeter of my embroidery hoop just with a really simple little straight stitch, and now we're going to tackle the edge here. So we're going to use a clear, like a white thread. So we're just going to use a normal white thread and we're going to double it up so it's nice and strong. Use the needle that you've just used, and we're going to gather. So you're going to run your needle through, if you can see there, halfway between the edge of the embroidery hoop and the edge of the fabric. You want to do about halfway, and you're going to do like just like a standard straight stitch all the way around back to the beginning. Make sure you have a knot in the end of your thread, because this is then when you're going to pull it together to create a gather, and that will then kind of tuck to the back like so. So do that now. So as you get to the end, you might be able to see that I've got my knot and then the rest here. Before tying that off, you want to lay it down and just tug like so, and you'll see that it starts to gather in the fabric. You might have to pull, there we go. So you want to make sure that's nice and pulled nice and tight, and then you can start to tie that off, and that will end up pulling it together, and it'll create a nice neat edging on your back here. So I'm just going to cut off my needle at the bottom there. You can also give it an iron just to give it a little press down, but it depends how solid it feels. So make sure it's nice and tight, as tight as you can get it, and then trim off your loose ends. Turn it round and you are ready to decorate. And there you go, you can see how I've managed to put mine on, and it feels nice and solid, nothing feels like it's going to fall off. And so the final touch is to add the ribbon at the top. So you want to cut a length of ribbon, as long as you require it to be. Wrap it round a couple of times to the frame. So put the ribbon, fold it in half and put the ribbon through the centre part of your hoop. Pull over, so you're creating a loop. That should go further in, but for some reason it's not. There we go. So then it should look like this. And then you can create a little knot at the top. Ready to hang it in your space. So I'm just going to trim down the edge there, and then I'm going to use another bit of strip of ribbon just to make a nice little bow at the front here. So simply wrap it round, tie it, and create a nice little bow. I'll just trim that down. And there you go, so you've got a nice little bow and your hanging string and your nicely newly decorated embroidery hoop. Thank you for joining me on this video. I hope you found it fun and I hope you found it useful, and I hope you found a lovely way to display your enamel pins. If you've liked this video, please like it, think about subscribing to my channel and check out my other videos. I'll leave a link to anything I think is relevant that you might also enjoy in the description below.